Well, guys, here we are. Backs against the wall. You lose one more game. The season's pretty much a done deal. And I'm still just kind of surprised it got to this point. And there's a lot of things that I could say that have nothing to do with the game we're going to play tomorrow afternoon. You know, this team, they had the opportunity to go sign a guy like Evan Mathis right before the season started, and we chose to let him go to Denver. And he ended up signing in Denver for a pretty small amount of money, an amount of money that we probably could have come up with if we really wanted to. This team had the opportunity to draft offensive linemen in the draft, and they waited until the fourth round. They got a couple guys who were clearly not ready to play, one guy who might not be ready to play ever, and instead they decided to invest at positions where they were already looking good, like the defensive line. And they got players that I like, but you wonder if, a guy like a Shaq Mason, who's playing okay in New England this year, you wonder if you could have gotten a guy like that. And the fact that this front office went into this season so stacked and so ready to play football at so many positions and decided to look at this offensive line and went, oh, we're okay. It's pretty unacceptable, but it's what we got. And if you want to be optimistic about things, it's not done yet, but in my opinion, in order for us to get a wild card spot, you do need to go 11-5, because if you look at what the Vikings and Packers are doing, obviously the Packers, they're having a hard time with things right now, but I expect the Packers to come around and at least win 11 games this year. And obviously the Vikings, they might win the division, they might get the wild card, but either way, they're going to probably get to at least 10 or 11 wins. And then you got like the Falcons, who they've fallen off a little bit here, but I don't think they're going to completely fall off the track in the second half of the season. So I really feel like if you go 10-6, that's probably not good enough. So to anybody who has any optimism, or to anybody who feels like we need to at least make the playoffs and somehow making the playoffs will salvage the season even if you go one and done, then you pretty much got to win out. And the good news is we have probably our easiest game of the season tomorrow. And after tomorrow, we'll know, because if you lose this game, then there's no point in even hoping for anything. So it was a week of drama for this team. Wednesday, you had interviews or, Q&As with Darrell Bevell, who's the offensive coordinator and play caller. You had an interview with Tom Cable, who's the offensive line coach. And you had an interview with Doug Baldwin. And all three of them kind of said the same thing. They basically said, well, on the part of the coaches, the two coaches, Bevell and Cable, they both basically said, this isn't our fault. Which, they didn't say those exact words, but that's kind of what you read when you look at the exact words that they use. They're basically saying it's not our fault. And again, they don't say this directly, but if you read what they say, they're basically pointing the finger at the quarterback, Russell Wilson, who had a mediocre to subpar game against the Cardinals, I'll give you that. And he's not playing great this season, but I don't know. I didn't like to hear that because, Bevell, he's already on a short leash right now with me, because he's already proven himself to be a guy who will throw a player under the bus to defend what he's doing, and I don't like that. And I really don't like it given some of the stuff that he's been doing. If he was a great offensive play caller and he always had our offense at the top of the league, and then the offense had a bad game, I would be okay with him throwing a player or two under the bus to an extent. I still don't think that stuff should be done in public, but at least then I could see it. But with the way the offense is playing this year, I just cannot see how he justifies basically saying, oh, this isn't my fault. And even Doug Baldwin, like I said, he was interviewed Wednesday, had some comments, and he basically said, don't blame the coaches, blame the players. Specifically, he seems to kind of sort of indicate Wilson as well, but I don't think that's exactly what he meant. I think it would be really stupid for a wide receiver to, throw a quarterback under the bus when the quarterback's the only guy who can get you the ball. But um, hearing that stuff, I don't want this team to go into every man for himself mode, but that's where I'm starting to feel like it's going. I see a couple of guys who think they might get fired and are basically trying to defend themselves against the inevitable questions and inevitable accusations and possibly defend themselves with their employer this coming off season. So drama there. Thursday, Earl Thomas was interviewed, and I love Earl. Earl's my favorite player on the team with Bobby Wagner. Earl is our best player in my opinion, and you listen to him talk, and you usually feel pretty good about what he has to say. And he talked about how they're not communicating like they used to, which is obviously true. They're not making the plays they used to, obviously true. And then he talked about needing to forgive. Everybody needs to forgive everyone else in the secondary so they can come together. So I read that and I thought to myself, he's got to be talking about Cam. And that makes a lot of sense. Cam Chancellor sat out training camp, preseason, and the first two games of the season, comes back. He's been up and down. He was great against Detroit. He was terrible against Cincinnati. In every other game, sometimes he makes a big hit, sometimes he makes a good tackle, other times he doesn't know what the hell he's doing in coverage. It's been an up and down season, and I actually feel like the bad has outweighed the good with Cam Chancellor this season. So I'm looking at him. I look at a guy who maybe he doesn't have the communication stuff down 100% because he missed the first two games in the preseason and the stuff right before the preseason. So I think that's a little bit of of Earl calling Cam out. I think it puts a spotlight on Cam Chancellor as being a big part of the problem so far this season. And you can see it on the field a little bit too. Like even against Arizona, we're more than halfway through the season, and Cam is still giving up that touchdown down the seam to tight ends. It's the same play that Cincinnati beat us on for touchdowns twice. It's the same play that Carolina beat us on with the last second touchdown that they got in that game. So this week, a lot of people calling other people out using coded language, and you don't like to see that from your team, of course. So didn't like to hear all that. And because of that, I wouldn't be totally amazed if the team is just kind of crumbling a little bit. So from that angle, I could see disaster striking tomorrow and our season ending. But really, I look at it, and then it's the 49ers. We already crushed them in San Francisco earlier this year. That game was pretty much over by halftime. And I got to believe the team has enough pride to come together and play at least well enough to beat the 49ers. You don't even have to play that well to beat the 49ers. So this game, no chance of seeing Colin Kaepernick, so he really has played his last game against us. Bittersweet. There's nobody in the NFL over the last few years who I've enjoyed beating more than Colin Kaepernick and Jim Harbaugh. Now they're both probably done in San Francisco. Harbaugh obviously done since last year, and now Kaepernick's probably not going to come back. So we got Blaine Gabbert, a retread, failed in Jacksonville, and played okay a couple weeks ago against Atlanta, and obviously San Francisco's had the bye week to think about this game, but I'm just not going to be afraid of Blaine Gabbert beating you. They got no Carlos Hyde, so they're down to their, fourth string running back, because Reggie Bush is obviously out for the season. So Carlos Hyde, best player on their offense, he's out. Anquan Baldwin is a 50-50. I think he'll play. So you put all the pieces together, and you better find a way to win this one. So San Francisco, don't expect anything from their offense. Obviously, our defense isn't at their best, but our defense, not at their best, should be more than enough. One thing that I'll keep an eye on is Bruce Irvin is out. He's got the knee injury. He might not be back for a week or two. And last game, Bruce Irvin was actually really, really important for us because he was actually covering Anquan Bolden down the field on many plays. I saw him do it at least once, and there were other plays where he was doing it too. And that allowed Kerry Williams to be a little protected from getting burned, because Kerry Williams has obviously had some real problems this year in coverage. He's failed to make quite a few plays, and that what we did against the 49ers was put it on Bruce Irvin. And now Mike Morgan gets the start. Mike Morgan's not really a guy who we've ever seen do anything for us, so I don't know. We'll see if that ends up having an impact. Obviously, you expect Richard Sherman to completely take Torrey Smith out of the game, but Kerry Williams on Anquan Bolden, that's going to be an interesting one. So that's the defense. I expect nothing but the best from them, especially coming off one of the worst games that they've played in years. Offense. Offense has not really put together a good game this season. Got to happen sooner rather than later, just because of, the law of averages. You got to eventually have a good game. And it looks like we're going to have everybody except Paul Richardson. So their health is there once again. What I would like to see, more plays where Tyler Lockett is the first read or the second read. Like if you go back and you watch the interception that Wilson threw against Arizona to Honey Badger, Tyler Lockett's wide open down the middle of the field, but Wilson never got to that point in his reads. He'd already read that Baldwin was open and threw Baldwin the ball, but he missed, made a bad throw, because if he throws it to the inside, Baldwin catches it anyway. But Lockett was more open, and he had pretty much a guaranteed touchdown. So I would like to see a little more usage of Lockett and Graham. Those are the two big-time playmakers. And obviously Baldwin is a guy who always gets open, and he's always good for, a handful of catches in a game, but he doesn't have the ability to break a game open like a Graham or a Lockett. So offensively, I want to see stuff like that. Lynch should play. He didn't practice this week. He's questionable, but apparently he's likely to play. Even if he doesn't, I still expect good things. So let's string some stuff together, guys. And nothing that we do in this game is going to get me really excited, because I've already seen this team blow games when they play good quarterbacks, when they play good teams. So if we beat up on the 49ers this week, I don't care if we win by 50. I'll give the team a pat on the back if they win by 50 or something, but, they're not going to sucker me into this. This is just, the quarterback quandary. Go look at the quarterbacks that we've beaten so far this year. Go look at the quarterbacks we've lost to so far this year. Blaine Gabbert clearly belongs in that second group with guys who are just not worthy of starting in the NFL. So you can't prove anything this week other than you get another win in the win column. So I expect to handle business, but if the team just goes out there flat and shows, no heart and just kind of lays down, I'm not going to be amazed. There's a lot of stuff going wrong this year, so let's go. Let's get this win. Let's give people a reason to have some kind of faith and get ready for a game that I'm kind of dreading, going in, hosting Pittsburgh. But more on that when it's time. So see you guys later. I'm out, and I'm going to watch the end of these college games.